Saul attacks David, the more things work out on David's behalf. We need to understand this in our life. God is accomplishing His will in our life. And the more vigorously this world attacks us in all kinds of ways, the more God is working in our lives. Have you ever done one of those Chinese finger puzzles? I think I had my fingers stuck together for 3 weeks one time. Could not figure it out. This is how God works. This is how God works. The more the world pulls, the more the world works against us, the tighter it becomes. God uses the world's activities against us and the horrible things that happen to us to do good things. To do good things in our life. This is something called reverse returns. And we can see it throughout the Bible. It's not just this one place. The more the world works against us, the more God does on our behalf. Think about Joseph. His brothers sold him into slavery. This is Joseph's brothers bringing Joseph's coat to Jacob. They meant it for evil. God reversed it and did something amazingly glorious for David. This is a funky picture of Moses. I don't know what costumes they were wearing. It must have been painted in the Middle Ages sometime or something, and they thought Moses was, I don't know what that costume is. But Moses is here, and Pharaoh tries to stop the Israelites. He's tried to stop them by killing all the baby boys, but there were just more of them. God reversed it. Pharaoh tried to stop the Israelites from leaving, and God reversed all of that, and they left with more money than they came in with. God reversed all of that. This is a picture of Haman, one of the great reversals of all time. Haman is the guy on the ground, and Mordecai is the guy on the horse. Haman was up on his high horse and thought he could have his way. He thought he could run the world. He thought he could kill the Jews, and he ended up proclaiming the glory of Mordecai. He hated Mordecai, but God reverses all of that. God is into reversal. Daniel in the lion's den, they thought they could get rid of him. God reversed that. The greatest reversal of all, though, is the cross. The world thought that they could get rid of Jesus. Evil thought that it could crucify Jesus and stop God's plan. But God used the cross to bring salvation into the world. John talks about the cross of Christ as His coronation. We look at the cross and see that God can take all of the evil in this world and transform it for the good of those who love Him. He can transform us. He can transform the world. And that's why Jesus says that persecution and the troubles that we have in this world are a cause of rejoicing, because God can take those and reverse it and make it into something good. Can transform those situations. The passage in Matthew and this passage in 1 Samuel and the great reversal on the cross should give us comfort. Because we know that God can take any situation that is an obstacle in our path and transform that into something good. Do something marvelous out of it. The very problem we face today can be used by God to further His purposes. In any way that we look at it. Whether it's a disease, whether it's unemployment, whether it's a problem with a person, God can take all of those and use it to further His purposes. This is a picture of John Perkins. John, as a pastor down in Mississippi, was very, very influential in the civil rights movement. In his earlier days, he hated white people because of what they were doing down in Mississippi. He hated them. But he loved the Lord, Baptist minister, started a great ministry. One day, he'd sent his youth group to a neighboring town, and on their way back, they got arrested by some white police officers who laid a trap for Perkins. And they said, "Come and bail your kids out." He says, "All right, I'm on my way." He gets to the neighboring town, outside this jail, and the police officers jump him, and they start beating him. And it wasn't just the city police, it was the county police, the sheriffs, it was the state patrol. Everybody was there, gunning for him. They threw him in jail and said, you're not in Simpson County, now you're in Brandon. And they began to beat him, and from that time on, they beat him until he was left for dead. They threw him in a jail cell. His students were all there in the jail cell with him. They didn't think he was going to make it through the night. They thought he had been left for dead. When Perkins woke up, the first thing he saw was one of these white police officers that had beat him. And he said, the first thing I saw was that what hate had done to these people. When I saw that, I just couldn't hate back. The horrible thing that happened to Perkins changed his life, transformed his life. He began to minister not only to blacks, but also to whites, and to offer them mercy and forgiveness. This comes from his website, Start Showing Mercy. He had been shown mercy. He had been shown what horrible things happen if he was into hating, and it transformed his life, and he was able to transform his community. Christians are called on not so much to win, to overcome, but we are called on to transform the situations. And God allows us to do that with the great reversal through the cross. He lets us transform this world. And he starts by transforming us. A loving opposition can transform enemies, but Dr. Perkins shows that, first of all, we have to be transformed. There are things that God wants to do in our lives, that God wanted to do in David's life. And so he allows horrible things to happen so that when David became king, he wouldn't do horrible things. This is Jerry Sitzer. Jerry's a professor at Whitworth College in a town close to where we used to live in Washington. And in 1991, we heard about a horrible accident. I tried to get a picture of a car, but I think that car is way too new for Jerry's situation in 91. Dr. Sitzer was on his way home from an activity with his family. And he was hit by a drunk driver doing 85 miles an hour. And in the blink of an eye, he lost his mother, he lost his wife, and he lost his youngest daughter. In a blink of an eye, he lost 3 generations of his family. He had a horrible time dealing with this situation and has written a number of books and articles about how he learned to deal with this situation. But he had to become transformed by the evil that had happened to him into something better. He talks in one of his books about dreaming a dream, about how the sun was setting and he was chasing the sun. And he was heading out after the sun, but he couldn't run fast enough in his dream.